BMW E21. The history of the third series of BMW began with this body, and next year it'll be 50 years since the beginning of its production. Here in Belarus, there is only one such car for sale. In Russia, there are only 10 of them. Most of them are rotting in garages or somewhere else, and it's a big luck to have such a model in our review today. The owner of this car has been keeping her for 4 years, 2 years of which were spent on restoration. The body was bought for $850. It was completely rewelded, sandblasted, and painted. The approach to restoration can be seen in the details. These are galvanized brackets, galvanized bolts, the geometry of the body and attached parts is smooth. At the same time, the owner of the car is a very humble guy, and he says that there's a lot of work has to be done on this car, so it's not a restoration so far. Now let's go to the most fascinating part, what attracts me, and of course I'm talking about the engine that is under the hood. It has a 2-liter M10 engine, it's factory installed, and the owner chose the most uncommon way to boost the power. Instead of putting here a more modern and powerful engine, the owner decided to turbocharge this archaic 8-valve M10, neglecting the economic reasonability and return from the engine. He was just pursuing his desire to turbocharge. So here's the M10 engine. There's a nice legend that on the basis of this unit in the 70s, in Formula 1 they removed up to 1400 horsepower without modifying the unit itself. We're not gonna see the full picture anyway, because in fact it was BMW's PR move. Like their engines are used in Formula 1, they can hold 1400 horsepower, so you can just buy them and enjoy your life. Therefore, speaking of the modifications of this engine, it has pistons from Mercedes M102, which allow to reduce the compression ratio to 8.1, and it has springs from Schrick. Next is turbo exhaust manifold. The owner welded it from black steel by himself, wrapped it all up in thermal tape, so now it looks something like an equal-length manifold, and installed a TD0415T turbocharger from SAAB engine. The turbo blows off 0.8 bar, and according to the injector's load, it has something around 200 and 220 horsepower. The intercooler is from BMW X3, the main radiator is made in China from BMW E30, but it also perfectly fits in BMW E21 body. The oil cooling is realized through an oil plate adapter, and the radiator is also put carefully in a sandwich between the intercooler and the main radiator. Some parts are taken from a newer car, and its brand is not even BMW. These are 630cc fuel injectors from some American car. These are your favorite VAG coils that are installed through such a nice bracket that was designed and cut by the owner himself. By default, this engine is powered either through a carburetor or through variations of G-tronic system, but the owner has installed January 5.1 control unit, modifying it by himself. He took the wiring from BMW engine M43 as a basis, cut it to match the length, and put additional sensors. Among them is a sensor gas from Gazelle, which is installed instead of the distributor cap via such an interesting adapter, which was printed on a 3D printer. And I was the one who helped him customize all this stuff. And if you like what we do, you can support our channel on Patreon by going via the link in the description. According to factory settings, this engine goes from 0 to 100 km per hour in 11 seconds. Now let's check the turbocharger. As always, we failed to capture the best result. On the video we have 7.2 seconds, and without the video we had 6.6. By the way, the tires are torn into shreds. I think that this car is able to go 6 seconds with good tires. Look at how well the cold air intake is implemented into the turbocharger. Ideally, we still need to install such a box, which will limit the hot air flow into it, but it will make the car less authentic and more sporty. And I guess the owner wouldn't go for it, so he left it the way it is. The air is coming behind the grille. By the way, speaking of the grille, these cars were available with 2 types of headlights: twin headlights and single headlights, just like we see in this model. And please write in the comments which headlights you like most, twin headlights or single headlights. Personally, I like single headlights because twin headlights models look like an old Zhiguli 6 at a certain angle. And I'm talking about this car on the screen. As you can see, the exhaust here has split pipes. This is also a feature of the 323 series, which had the M20 engine. The suspension here is stock, was sandblasted and polished. It was assembled using new silent plugs. The only modification here is -40 springs, and this body had R30 rims. They were high-profile tires, but the owner installed R16 rims with low-profile tires. It also has BMW Brembo calipers, disc brakes at the rear, which is quite uncommon for this body. It also has a differential lock from BMW E36. But here's the thing. After changing the rims and lowering the car, the tires slightly touch the arches, but it looks quite sporty and cool. The interior is very elegant, which was a feature of those old cars. By the way, it was the first generation of BMW in which they began to angle the dashboard toward the driver. It has become a famous trademark of BMW ever since. The seats are original, renovated, and they have lateral support. The brand is Recaro. They're very nice to the touch and beautiful. Speaking of the features, it has power windows, central locking, electric mirror adjustment, rear quarters, a sunroof, additional instruments. Basically, that's it. The interior is very nice, neat, clean. Certainly there are some minor flaws because of age, but the owner says that he built this car not for keeping it at his garage and driving to exhibitions. He wanted to ride it every day. By the way, there were no covers for handbrakes in the cars back in the day. Instead, there was such a plug between the fibers of the handbrake mechanism itself. Another interesting feature is the way the doors are open here. The door opening lever is located inside the handle. You have to do this kind of wrist movement to open the door, which is very unusual for a modern car user. And now let's finally enjoy all the features this car has and take a ride. The first thing I wanted to do here is pop out the sun visor, but unfortunately I couldn't find a sun visor here because it's just not here. I don't know, it's either a drawback on the engineer's part or just a poor configuration. Anyway, let's ride. Alright, we're good to go. But first, power windows and the sunroof. There we go. The engine is very quiet, by the way. You can hardly hear the exhaust at the rear, but at the front there's something clanking in the engine. It seems normal to me for a 50-year-old engine. Heavy cast-iron engines like this one are always noisy. By the way, when the owner switched to a fully electronic engine power system January 5.1, he said that the difference in the stability of the engine and the overall elasticity of the engine is very noticeable. I have a chart of engine fill rate depending on RPM, and it shows that the turbocharger reaches maximum boost at 3,500 RPM. I remind you that the boost here is 0.8 bar, and that 0.8 bar goes right up to the limit. Let's try to push it. Third gear, 2,500. Well, somewhere around 3,000 it got blown up. Considering its small weight and about 200 horsepower, this car is doing impressive. We accelerated quickly, so in the blink of an eye the speed reached 120 km per hour, and we're in Autobahn and there's no speed limit. The acceleration is really impressive. If I didn't have the cameraman on board, I think I would get a more fascinating feeling from the dynamics of its acceleration. The owner says he gets the ultimate thrill from it. Just imagine, you're driving in such a small capsule which you have restored all by yourself. She's sleek, she's beautiful, she has 200 horsepower and she's doing quite well. According to the factory, the maximum speed of the 2-liter M10 engine is 175 km per hour. But when tuning this car with the owner, we reached around 200. Going faster was just scary. But she can handle 220, 230, maybe even 240, if the gearing allows it. Speaking about fuel consumption, the factory stated that the car consumes about 12-14 liters per 100 km in the city. When I asked the owner how much it consumes, he said he didn't know, he didn't care. I don't know if he really doesn't care or he just escapes from those scary numbers. And I also want to mention the flywheel and the clutch mechanism is from the M20 engine. The transmission is Getrag 260 from the M30 engine. The Getrag 260 is used by drifters, which shows its reliability, and I think it's the last thing on this car that might be considered a weakness. And obviously there's no doubt about it. So now let's check its handling by taking this left turn at a big intersection. Wow, it was exciting on the way out of that corner, but we've just had a bit of an arch scrapping thing and a bit of a bounce. Listen, after that corner, I'd like to start overtaking all the cars in the traffic. But I'm not doing this, and you probably shouldn't do that either. I feel like I want to go to her native town and start entering sharp corners there. The saddle blow-off is fascinating, by the way, and the suspension is very good at absorbing bumps. We just ran over the railway tracks and there were still some holes on the road. The car is stable, it handles smoothly, basically the suspension is well made. The owner picked out all the components, track width, wheel axle offset and whatnot, because usually with this kind of non-standard tuning and installing different wheels, the car feels wobbly and it's very difficult to control it. But it's not the case with our BMW. Once again, second gear. The arches are scratching the tires. That's quite unfortunate. By the way, here's the thing with the tachometer. The green zone starts from 1000, at 3000 the full bar ends, and it starts descending to 5500. Those engineers just didn't know that in 40 years some guys from Belarus will install a turbocharger in this car. The green zone should start from 3500 now and end somewhere far after the limit. It's very comfortable to sit in Recaro seats. They have lateral support. It feels as if they were made for my body size. I feel as comfortable as possible. One more feature I forgot to mention is the power steering rack. This is a very rare feature according to the owner. Power steering rack adds even more convenience to the steering of this car because without power steering, the number of revolutions of the steering wheel would have increased. It would have affected the responsiveness of handling. In general, it would only cause troubles, but here everything has been picked out so that the car would go smoothly and the responsiveness of steering would remain. The car gets a lot of attention. In the parking lot, while we were talking, several people approached us asking about the fuel consumption, how fast it can accelerate. I know you'll also be wondering how much money was put in this car to get to this condition. I asked this question to the owner. He said that he didn't really know the amount, and that's why I suggest that you calculate the cost of restoring this car by yourself. Write in the comments how much would you pay for this car and how much money you're gonna need to get to this condition, because we realize that investing in a car is far from equal to its final value. Thank you guys for watching until the end. Put your likes, leave your comments, subscribe to the channel, and bye.